Now, but get involved, balance checks the audio level.
Yeah, that sounds
Good.
Yeah, it's good.
That's not my concern. That might come to your say, oh, look,
I can't hear you, Alan.
You sound a lot better.
Tom, he wants you to talk into the little mic. The one in your hand, use this.
the one in your hand, people here, one that's.
Tom.
That's
This one.
No, this one right here.
That's the one I was talking to.
That's the
That's
right
good.
one.
That's good.
Forget about that one. Excuse me.
All right, Alan. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce Andrew Moore. Andrew is the manager of the Frederick Municipal Airport. And among other things in his background, he's been a pilot and a builder of experimental aircraft. And with that, I'll turn the program over to Andrew to tell you about the Frederick Airport and all its wonders and mysteries.
I can wear this and move around a bit.
It's one of those voice actions.
Okay, how does that sound, guys?
Yeah.
Good? All right. So, like Tom said, Andrew Moore, airport manager.
There's a bunch of people here.
Okay, so if I stay right here, I'm good?
Please.
Okay, so Andrew Moore, airport manager out of Frederick Municipal Airport. I've been out there since about 2018. Sean Dempsey is the assistant manager out there. At a general aviation airport, we very much work in tandem. And you know, I was fortunate enough tonight to see Dick Pettigrew, who I'm very familiar with, to see out at the airport all the time. So he sees us running back and forth around the airport, doing a little bit of everything. So today I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the airport. I'm going to give you some examples of what we do, why we're valuable in the community and stuff like that. And that's why we come out to the community. That's why we have community events in addition to providing a piece of transportation for the community. So that's really the idea. So I will have to say at 7 p.m. So it just started at City Hall. I also have going where my boss is going to be presenting a fence grant for me at the same time. So if there's a very small chance he calls me at about 7:15, I might have to quickly answer that and answer a quick question. So we can go ahead and advance the slide. So you kind of can't see all stuff up there, but Frederick Airport officially was established in 1949. They started building it out about 45, 47, 48. You can see in this area here, that's the same concrete that was out there in, this is about the 60s. Same concrete is out there today, and it's got some patches in it. The Airways Inn restaurant is the same structure, exact same structure as it is today. The stacked trailer is gone. They used to do weather in the upper room there in the top. My office is that second story above the snack trailer. And you can actually go just beneath the beacon there. That's enclosed. We don't really use it for anything. There are people such as Dean Stickler that I talked with at the airport, who are a local Frederick resident. They live in downtown Baker Park. They told me stories after looking at this picture where they biked up to this airport and up to that fence and used to watch these people fly. He could tell me what these little boxes there were cabinets full of oil for the aircraft and the fuel pumps right there. And they went on to have full military and full aviation careers, and now they're flying recreationally at the airport. So they've seen the entire lifespan of the airport from about this time on. So it's kind of neat. You can go ahead and advance the slide. So another photo, opposite side, more southern in the airport, looking north. Those hangars still exist. There are midfield hangars. There's no rollers hangars, but people still occupy those hangars from the 60s until now. Airways Inn is the building you see there. Same building. It's from offices. Go ahead and advance to the next slide. So before Frederick Airport as it sits now was developed, Fort Detrick Flying Field existed. In the 20s, they started building out a flying field on the site of Fort Detrick where it is today. This is a picture of 1931, where they had a base squadron there, a training squadron. They had some structures up there in the corner, and it was a full military training airfield, right where Fort Detrick is today. Some of the buildings there still exist. They use them for office space. The runway in the 40s, I believe, was removed, and now there's only a helipad on Fort Detrick. And in that forties period, that's when they moved, the city and county bought some of the land for where the airport sits today and saw some of those 1960s photos. You can go to the next slide. This is 10 years in the future, same Fort Detrick flying field, 1941. A little bit more structured. You can see a hangar under construction. About 47, 48 is when they started to wind this airport down and switch over to that Frederick airport where it sits today. 1949, they officially declared it as an airport. Good.
We have a question during your talk.
Yes, go for it. Yes, thank God. I'm not sure what that one was. Anything that light should have been concrete. At Fort Detrick, though, I'm not sure what it is. There's a couple good resources. So if you look up abandoned little known airfields, you can look up per state, including Maryland, and we'll give some more background on this. There's also a book out there by Maryland Historical Trust called Maryland Aloft, which goes through all the Maryland airports and the significance with them.
When it was an airport there, was that the port at that time or not, or was that open to the public, that airport?
I'm not positive with that one. I want to say it was probably just a military field, because you got to keep in mind during this time frame, flying wasn't necessarily just growing into the area. So there are very few people. I don't know if they would mix private stuff and not. And there's also other fields probably in the area that people would use to fly, but I'm not sure if Detrick was strictly just military or not. But once Frederick Airport opened, it was public at that point. Okay, you can go ahead and advance. Okay, so we get to modern day. Any of the flying people in the audience, this is a sectional, it's kind of like a road map for people flying around. You can see Frederick Airport is in the blue there with our 2 runways. Kind of the blue dashed circle is our Class Delta airspace, our controlled airspace. That's where our contract tower controls all the aircraft during operating hours, which would be 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. After that time, it becomes a pilot controlled field. So in about 2 hours from now, the tower shuts down, the airspace switches to Class Echo, and the pilots will basically talk to other pilots and self-announce what they're doing, what their intentions are, stuff like that. So our airspace changes during the nighttime. It's open 24 hours a day, the airport is, 7 days a week, every day of the year. We don't close unless we cannot maintain the surfaces, basically, which I'll talk about a little bit later. That ring is 5 miles. So 5 miles from the surface to 2,800 feet is what our air traffic control tower controls. Field elevation is 309 feet above sea level, and we're about 620-ish acres out there now. Go ahead and advance. Uh-oh.
See if the house is on.
How stuck is it? Let's see if I'm still connected. Okay, so if the left right doesn't work, maybe just put it around here somewhere. I'm not sure. Okay, so I put this in here. This is a fairly recent satellite image. Ironically, during a lease renewal a couple of years ago, we have Richard Krause and Associates was a aerial surveying company that I'm not sure when they started, the 70s, probably 80s. They started at Frederick Airport, they grew, and then now they're owned by a larger insurance aggregate data company. So in their lease renewal, they can take these sat images really inexpensively. They're valuable to us. So once a year, as part of their renewal, they give us one of these photos, and all they do is on the way home from a mission, they just fly 10,000 feet over the airport and take a picture, and they deliver it to me. And it's valuable to me. It's cheap for them to do, so they've got a little off their rent. But you can see here the fairgrounds there with the track and the size of the fairgrounds, and then compare the size of the airport. So 620 acres. We're a very big land mass in the area. So it's like this image because it kind of gives you a picture of scale and reference point for the whole city. You can also see the Wren Quarter neighborhood right there, very close to the airport. You can advance to the next slide. I'm glad I know this slide so well because I can't see half of what we're writing on it. Our main runway is 5,820 feet. long, which is just over a mile. And we have about 100,000 operations per year. So we claim that we're the second busiest airport after BWI, which is technically true. But in reality, every so often we jockey with Martin State Airport, another general aviation airport, for second busiest after it. Officially, this last year, we were about 5,000 to 10,000 more operations than they were, and we continue to grow. So I think we'll probably hold that second position for a while, but we'll see how it goes. We've got 7 businesses on the field. Most of them are aviation related businesses. The restaurant obviously is not, and I count them as one of the businesses. I'm a big numbers person, so rather than knowing these large, grandiose economical numbers that the state gives us, which are nice, I went around and counted all of the employees, full and part-time, with every business throughout the airport. So there's at least 160 jobs related directly to the airport. So these are ones where if the airport went away tomorrow, all those jobs go away because they're aircraft maintenance, their Trooper 3 crew, stuff like that. So direct job related to the airport. We've got 200 based aircraft. A based aircraft is someone that just claims this airport as their home. They could be on a tie down or a hangar. We have 125 hangars and 100% hangar occupancy, and has been for as long as I know about. And if you want to get on a hangar, you've got a 7-year wait list. So you got to wait 7 years to get on a hangar. And the most obvious question there is, why don't you build more? And the answer to that is they're very expensive. They take a long time to pay back. So we have a plan, we're working a plan. So either someone privately is going to build more hangars, or we will in about 4 or 5 years. But they've been attempting to build hangars there for probably the last 15 or 20 years. So in the next 5, we will have a project initiated. And if we don't, someone privately will build additional hangars because there is a demand for it. It's just there's someone coming up with the capital is challenging. So you can go ahead to the next slide. This slide's up there just to give you a reference point for how much maintenance we have out there, how many things we have to take care of. Those are our 2 runways, and this is kind of from the west looking east. It's about 1.5 million square feet of pavement that we have to plow and salt, and well, not salt, but de-ice, and keep clear. All of them have lights on the side. Most all taxiways do, plus the hangars, plus the taxiways and the aprons in the middle. So this is to give you some scale, but about 1.5 million square feet of space. You can go ahead and advance. So we do all our own snow removal. It's another cool snow picture. People like to, right when we get finished plowing, go fly and take cool pictures because it really does look pretty neat in the snow. We do all our own grounds maintenance. The thing that I often tell people is, as airport management, they think you just run an airfield, right? All you do is airfield stuff, runway, taxiway. And the reality is we act more as property managers than anything. And the reason for that is we need to fund the ability to run that airport. So we have about 250,000 square feet of hangar and corporate hangar type space and office space that we lease out, and we also maintain that. So that provides us the $800,000 in revenue we need to be able to run the airport, staffing, insurance, fuel, equipment, stuff like that. Be able to do that snow removal and grounds maintenance on all that area. So we do all that with 3 full-time staff, including myself, and 2 part-time staff. And the 2 part-time staff were just added in the last 2 or 3 years. So at a general aviation airport, it's very typical to have to there's no siloing. Everybody does everything. So if we get behind on mowing, the management jumps out on the mower and mows. When it comes time to plow, we're all plowing, except for we have a part-time admin in the office. She doesn't plow, but that was an important job. But generally, there's never a limit to what you do on an airport. You can go ahead and advance. So this map, you can't read it, but it's the National Plan of Integrated Airport System. That is effectively the interstate highway plan of FAA, and that talks about how do we make this interconnected network of airports throughout the country. So there are about 20,000 airports in the United States. There's about 5,000 public airports. The rest of them are private airports. And you can see this map of those public airports, those 5,000. 3,300 are great enough in size and in the right geographic location to be relevant and needed in the eyes of the FAA. And what they do with that is they fund it through an airport improvement program. That's only 3,300 out of that 20,000 airports are publicly funded. Of that 3,300, 12% are commercial service. So that's from Hagerstown to BWI in size. BWI is a large hub, Hagerstown to non-hub. Those are commercial service. Those are ticketed airline passengers. General aviation, which is the type that we are, make up almost 90% of that 3,300 airport network in the United States. So I'll go a little bit more into general aviation, but it's basically general aviation is anything unscheduled. And there's not a ticket associated with anything general aviation related. It's still commercial traffic, but it is unscheduled. So our role in the NIPIAS is to relieve commercial congestion traffic from BWI. That's our purpose in the system. That commercial traffic can be charter, power line inspection, aerial survey and spraying, organ transplant, and flight training. BWI is very good at scheduled airline travel. They do very high volume. That's really what they're built for. So we take a lot of that unscheduled, very broad ranging stuff, and we do it at Frederick. And a lot of people even use our Frederick Airport to access the Baltimore region, sometimes easier in their own private aircraft. You can go ahead and next slide. So pictures are great. Our engineer, on-call engineer, took this picture. There isn't a better way to explain what general aviation is than this. It's the same ramp as you saw in the first picture in 1960, same concrete. Obviously, it's a little weathered and has some patches now. But in our 24-hour day observation area, this is the view you get. And you see a commercial charter operation, a jet, and a commercial balloon operation happening at the same airport, controlled by the same tower at the same time. So general aviation is a broad range, except for airlines.
Lewis, have to go from there.
They don't have to, no. Yeah. They don't have to. Patrick Smith sometimes does. It just depends on what they're doing, but they'll launch from the airport and they'll land out somewhere always. And sometimes they have fields they can launch off of. I think they have a harder time finding people who allow them to launch rather than when they land, they just have to land somewhere and it's a crapshoot whether they're nice or not. So that's the most I know about it. Okay, so behind that screen there, it says businesses love airports. And I kind of go into this as just another use case of why this piece of transportation infrastructure is useful to the community. It ends up for businesses being an expedited access point to this area. And it's not downtown Frederick, it's Frederick County, it's the surrounding counties. It's, like I said, sometimes it's actually easier to fly into Frederick to reach Baltimore and DC. So it's this access point, this transportation access point. Aircraft are generally not inexpensive to fly, so they're costly for businesses to do, but they act as a time machine for that business. And typically with business, the quicker you can do something, the more competitive you end up being. So a lot of times those costs are often offset by how quickly they can get stuff done and efficiently. Two examples. Locally here, Wright Manufacturing, Frederick County, they manufacture mowers and sell all over the country. They called up a while back and they said, hey, we've got an aircraft coming in. We want to see if we can set our product line up just inside the observation area there, right next to the restaurant. We said, great, that's a fantastic use. So what they did is they chartered an aircraft. They went and picked up their dealer network throughout wherever they are, East Coast. They flew them back into Frederick. And as soon as they pulled up into Frederick, out their window, they saw their newer product line, all the prototypes, all the new stuff. And that sales network got to see right there. Then they walked off the plane, they walked around the fence, and they hopped on that mower and started cutting grass. And then they went in the conference room and set a signature and they started having a meeting. Then they went to the factory. Then they all got back on the plane and they all slept in their own beds that night. So that probably was not cheap for Wright Manufacturing to do, but they got a lot done in that one day. And it's because of general aviation airports like Frederick that it allows them to get really close to their final destination. It would be much more challenging to do that at BWI. The question?
That tar on top is on your computer, they might try to get rid of it, just go around.
Yeah, please live with it. Yeah, I think I know most of the slides, we'll see that on. Danfoss Engineering, this is another year or two, it's a Denmark-based company. They called up needing some additional support, just because of their operating rules, operating out of Europe. And, they were going around 5 different cities in the US, and Frederick was one of their last stops. And they were looking at building space or whatever they were looking at, but they had their executive team on there, spent 5 days in the United States going to these 5 cities, 1 day each. And then they launched from Frederick back to Denmark. So we're also an international airport. We get a couple of those per year. But this is another example where you've got these probably fairly well-paid executives flying around the country. And by the weekend, they can go do everything they need to do in the US and they can go back to their beds by the weekend.
So do you have to do the passport checking and all that stuff?
So we don't, we don't have customs there. And what they actually do is they came, one of their first stops, this is probably part of their planning, their first stops was some airport that does have customs. Customs comes with a whole list of things, maybe in the future we might. But if someone's trying to fly in a DCA airport, Reagan, they can stop at Frederick Airport. There's a program that one of our operators has that they can basically what they call sanitize the aircraft, and they check them in, and then they allow them going to DCA. DCA is a unique case for that. In general, they would normally, if they wanted to come to this area first, they would go to Dulles or BWI, clear customs, and then fly to Frederick or drive in or something. But yeah, we don't have customs. You need to have, you basically have to pay for customs, you have to pay for TSA, and you got a space for them, and space is a big thing we're limited on. You can go ahead and next slide. Okay, so the FAA Airport Improvement Program, that's that National Plan of Integrated Airport System. This is in reference to this. This is their funding mechanism for that, for the publicly funded airports. Similar to interstate highway systems, I like to compare to that a lot. Generally, pieces of transportation infrastructure are not profitable. They're never profitable. The only way to make them profitable is if you toll them all the time. So with that, the funding models are similar, where the federal government will largely fund these transportation infrastructure because it benefits the economy as a whole, right? And, you know, in our case, as an example, between 2015 and 2023, Frederick Airport processed about $28 million in infrastructure projects, and that costs the city and the county about $1.5 million each. When I say city, I mean the airport budget. That's because the FAA funds major capital programs, runways, taxiways, aprons at 90%. The state typically picks up 5%, and then the city and county cover the remaining 5%, 2.5 and 2.5%. So we're able to get a whole lot of stuff done for relatively not that much money, and it just wouldn't be possible without that federal program. So you may be asking yourself, why on earth would someone spend $30 million at Frederick Airport over 5 or 7 years? And the real answer is that NIPIAS, that map I showed you, we're just one piece of the puzzle, right? So the interstate highway goes through different states, it's thousands of miles. You know, you can have a mile of airport in Frederick and a mile of airport in South Dakota, and that's all you need, 2 miles of pavement versus a couple thousand. So strong FDK, a modern FDK airport makes the whole system work better. That's why they fund these airports. Next slide. Okay, looking forward, this is kind of where we're at now and where we're heading towards. South Corporate Apron expansion. We have an ACIP meeting tomorrow with the FAA and MA. We're going to talk about our next 5 years of funding and what we're planning on doing out here. It's a very exhausting governmental meeting, but it's mandatory and we have to do it. But our South Corporate Apron is the hashed area that's kind of lowest on the map there. It's one of our areas that are ready for development. We have not built new square footage, new hangar space at Frederick Airport in, let's see, 23 years since 2001. We've got a lot of demand, but we've never been able to connect those dots to be able to connect to the capital. We're building new square footage, even though the demand's there. So we are talking to someone now who is very interested, and I think it is very likely it'll happen, to build that first big hangar down in the South Corporate Apron, about a 30,000 square foot hangar, which is one of 7 hangars down there that would potentially double the amount of businesses here. Once you add that space, it'll add another potential 7 businesses, and it'll be about $14 or $15 million of investment. I'm sure you guys have seen Field of Dreams. A lot of this happens in airport, federally funded airport development. because you can't own the land beneath it, so it's not a very attractive or lucrative investment. But once you build the square footage, you'll be flooded with people who need the square footage. But the problem is connecting those two things. That's what we're trying to resolve also is the airport's financial position to be able to help some of these projects along. And we have a really good trajectory for that. So I expect that South Corporate apron to be about, we'll say maybe 1 to 7 years from now to be fully built out, once people see what can be done out there. We also have the midfield T hangars, which on Monday I'll be collecting whatever proposals are put in and see if there's private developers that want to build that. I've already got 2 proposals so far. To build all those 9 or so hangars in there can total up to $30 million. So 9 T hangars, we'll say 100 hangars is 30 million. So the number, the cost to build T hangars from year 2000 until now, 25 years later, roughly, basically quadrupled. So it's very expensive to build these hangars. One thing I'm particularly proud of, because I started this conversation almost 3 years ago with Beta Technologies, is our electric aircraft charger that has just been installed, and on Monday will be fired up for the first time. So what that is it's the example that is right there, but it's an electric aircraft, and they're targeting these aircraft. You'll see them often as vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, the ones that land on rooftops in urban areas. They'll do that, but I think more so they'll end up being more conventionally electrically powered aircraft. And we are now in the charging network in the area, and you'll see that on the next slide. The charging network for the area, so that if this becomes a thing, you know, maybe you get an air taxi to BWI or Dulles or Reagan in 10 years from now. We want to make sure that we were part of that. So we have now a charger installed that costs the airport nothing, because they need to build out their charging network in tandem with building these aircraft. And we're really excited about it. And starting Monday, we will officially be the first airport in Maryland to have one. We talked about T hangars. Incompatible land uses, that's something we're really focusing on too, and they have been actually for the last 10 years. Gaithersburg Airport, anybody been to Gaithersburg Airport? Heard about it? You hear about it a lot in the news. And the reason is they built up a lot of incompatible land uses around their airport. We're working now, and they've been working 10 years in the past to protect incompatible land uses. We're under a lot of pressure, particularly now, because of how much development there is. There's about 3 million in total planned compatible land use right around the airport, Gas House Pike and Bowman Farm Road, of this warehouse logistical space. And that works with an airport. It's low density people. Nobody complains about noise in a warehouse logistical space. So we're trying to promote that and protect certain residential developments right at border. Next slide. Okay, so this is Beta Aircraft's kind of charging map, more graphical than anything, but you can see how we're somewhere in there, I don't know, next to PNC and AGC. We're part of that charging network now, and they're doing these loops, and they're primarily funded by United Therapeutics out of Silver Spring, is how they got a lot of their initial funding. And we're hoping that sometime in 2025, they're going to start running research organs through their network, and we are one of their critical stops outside of the kind of the national capital region. So it's pretty cool stuff, still developing. Nobody knows how it's going to go in the future, but we'll be part of it. Next slide. Okay, this is a video, and I think this is like kind of a trailer for the airport. So go ahead and hit one more time and see if it plays.
Is there any audio with it? Could we have a problem?
Hit play, see if it goes. We can skip it if it doesn't work. Okay.
Frederick Municipal Airport is one of our city's best assets.
Frederick Municipal Airport is so important, Frederick, because of the jobs that it creates, over 500 direct jobs. Having this private airport is very important if you're a private.
Frederick Municipal Airport is a key part of our community. It serves those of us who live here and makes us more valuable to the entire region.
Frederick is becoming a transportation hub actually for the Baltimore, Washington border.
We see jets coming in and out of here every day. a use context.
All right, last couple this year, that would be, we'll stop in, we'll go downtown, Frederick, have lunch, we'll visit the shops. The airport is important to the city of Frederick because I like to think of us as a full service community. And one of the things that makes us a full service community is having this airport that's available to users both in Frederick and those that want to visit Frederick from other places or want to do business.
Frederick Municipal Airport also is there to serve you and your family.
Having Super 38 here in our airfield to provide services in this region is critical. It's access. We can receive injured people, fully ambulances here at the airfield. It's not uncommon for Frederick County to bring patients to us here. If you live in Washington County, Howard County, Frederick County, or anywhere over Pennsylvania, Virginia, or West Virginia, and you're injured, or you have specialty needs, you can go to a facility that Baltimore, where you're at. It is part of the fabric of the community in a way that is helpful to tell us and it's one of those things that allows us to talk about the city Frederick as being a community that offers something for them.
Safety, jobs, access, value, community. All minutes from our historic downtown. All thanks to Frederick Municipal Airport.
Okay, so there's our promo video. So we can go ahead and see if it goes to the next slide. And there you go. Okay, so I in my presentation, I kind of transition now less on why we're such a great transportation asset in the community and more like anybody that could care less about having an airport in our community and says like, how does this benefit me as a non-aviator? This next section is for you. So Maryland State Police Trooper 3, this is honestly my thought on the best thing we have to offer for all the non-aviation caring people in the community. The fact that we have this asset has been working at Frederick since 1973, so over 50 years in one form or another. And it's a state-funded program. If you don't know much about it, it's very unique. I think it might still be the only one in the country that's state-funded. And as a resident, you get a free ride in this if you need it in your worst hours. But it was based around the idea that if you have a traumatic event, you have a greatly increased chance of surviving it if you get to a shock and trauma unit within the golden hour. And with the state where we are, that's impossible in some areas. So they set up this network of aircraft that are all going to Baltimore shock trauma, right? So it's a really novel idea. It takes a lot of money to do it. It's funded predominantly, and it actually just went up a lot, but from your vehicle registrations. You paid vehicle registrations recently, so the big increase, that's partially because of this. Still a great program, still worth it. But they also do multi-mission, so they're law enforcement, they're hoist rescues. They do a lot of hoist rescues out in West Virginia. As they mentioned, they also go over state lines a little bit, so they have a certain mileage into Pennsylvania and West Virginia. They'll do rescues. They run children back and forth to hospitals, so they're really busy. It's really neat. We're the third unit they created in the state, so they've been running for a few years. But this is the best benefit that we have to offer the community that's not necessarily. Go ahead, next slide. We also have things like this. President Obama, this was in 2015, 14, something like that. Before I was there, but Marine One, the HMX units also use our airport because Camp David, they're in and out of there pretty frequently. Very rarely they actually motorcade out of our airport, especially for the president. I talk with Secret Service every year and they say it just doesn't really make sense. Usually it's easier just to motorcade from Andrews. More often, you can go ahead to the next slide. More often, we'll act as kind of a big parking lot for them. So here, this is very recently, you've got the three big green giants of Marine One, empty, of course, because they dropped everybody off at Camp David. And then you've got Ospreys for cargo and extra people. And then you kind of can't see it in this photo, but all the way near where my picture is over there is the Black Hawk that flies around with them. That from some of the military people at the airfield told me they're pretty sure the encrypted communication is in that helicopter, because even if we got, I'd say 1,000 feet away from there, we had two Marines that were pacing it the entire time that would start coming at us. And so they didn't like us to get near that one, but they use this kind of like a parking lot, which is neat. Go ahead, next slide. Okay, so this is our pride and joy of the community involvement. It's now 2 years old. It was created from scratch. The biggest question we always got, other than when are you getting airline service out of your airport, was when is the air show coming back? Have any of you guys remember going to the air show?
I went to
Yeah.
Andrews Air Force Base.
Yeah, they got that big one there, but the one here up until 2004 or 5, it was a big air show. It really was. I mean, I was never around for anything, but it was big. And they had a lot of big stuff, and Commemorative Air Force did it. And, they ended up stopping because the city stopped providing as much financial resources and equipment and stuff, and then Culpeper offered that stuff and wanted it down there. But this is our answer to that, is it's not gonna be that air show. It's gonna be a different community-based thing. It's only we just had our second one, so we've had 2 successful years where we've had over 10,000 people join this event. We've got our tenants who come out and support it. They help us. They display their planes. They let the community look at their planes up close, which is important. Our goal for this event was really to give one day out of the year that the community can come see the airport, come beyond the fence, see all the different careers you could do, see all the, a majority of people out there are people who are based at Frederick, people who live in these neighborhoods and other neighborhoods who just, either grew up flying or just enjoy flying recreationally. And it's their stuff that they have on display. So upper left corner, it's just a local pilot who works at AOPA, also Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. He just decided to fly in the middle of the event. It was a normal operation. It wasn't aerobatic or anything, and the picture looks really neat. Then we got Trooper 3 did a demo, and this lower left picture is new to this year. We had some large scale radio controlled airplanes, which is just great for us because it's super low liability. We don't have to have a big insurance policy or anything like that. We can get them really close to the people, and they think it's an air show. Kids think it's an air show, and there's jets there, and that looks like a real plane in the bottom picture. It's not. It's a remote control plane that has smoke on it. So it's just really. So anyway, our next one is Saturday, September 27th, 2025. So the free events, they're going to stay free for as long as we can manage it. And we're gonna grow them a little each year. So it's a really cool event. That's what gets the community out. That's what creates our community value. If we ever get any negative press, this is the people who said I've had a lot more positive experiences at the airport than any negative ones that might pop up. So that's why we do it. It's a ton of work. Go ahead, next slide. This is another video, short, but it goes through our last festival flight. It's really cool. That's Sean Dempsey.
It's been here for kids to meet the pilots that operate here out of the Frederick Airport. And get to see some of the resources that the local community has to assist here in the area. That's kind of where we're coming together and ready to do all that.
Today we came out to see the airplanes and have some fun. I used to be a flight attendant, so aviation is really cool to me. Just being up close and personal, all these wonderful planes that I've watched documentaries on, it's so exciting.
So this event is really different. There's a massive kids zone that we have that takes up an entire event right here. And there's a lot of kids activities that are centered here. Here on the right, you can see kids working around left and right. There's amazing airplanes where they go out and set down. There's fire trucks, there's police cars, different airplanes where they go and figure out how they can get involved. So this event is a place to be for everyone.
So that was a city made video. It was very impressive. The media department in the city has gotten really, really good. Let's see if you can. Okay, so other community events. We don't do this 5K anymore, but Special Olympics and City Police did it for a couple of years. Then Frederick Health did it, but it's a 5K on the runway. We shut down the runway. We run around and stuff like that. One of the guys that someone in this room may know, Frank, has a motorized couch that has a license plate that says Couch Potato on it. He takes advantage of things like this and rides the couch on the runway, which I think is awesome. This was several years ago. You can go to the next slide. Free observation area. So anybody that has kids, grandkids, friends, whatever, they like to go hang out. We've got an observation area right kind of beside, next to, behind the Airways Inn restaurant. It's free, picnic tables. You're that close to aircraft out there, so it keeps you safe. It gets you right there. It's as cool as you can do. Anybody that expresses any interest, even if you say, look, I've never wanted to fly, but I did want to just go up one time, you can go to our flight schools and get a discovery flight. And you go with an instructor for an hour and you discover whether you want to learn how to fly or not. And it's just a neat experience. You can say, I flew a plane for a little while. You can also buy gift certificates for anybody that is interested, and you can hand it to them and kind of maybe get them that initial thing, initial start. Go ahead to the next slide.
What is the cost?
Sorry.
What is the cost?
Well, I don't know if they are now, but generally, a discovery flight, I wanna say it's gotten to be like $150 for like 40-ish, 45 minutes. You have to call the flight schools and see what the current rates are, but generally to rent a plane by the hour is 130, 150 an hour probably now. And then the instructor is an additional 60. So if you were to fly 1 hour with an instructor at a flight school, it's about $200 these days with fuel and everything. Lock up again. There you go. Okay, this one's coming up too. I added this one just today. We also do, we don't. I help them out, but independent people do little events, usually at the NAC, the National Aviation Community Center, which is AOPA's leased hangar. They do a lot of community activities with. Can't really say, but those are my kids, and a selfie board we made of an airplane, and then kind of with Santa, I think it was last year. That's coming up soon. So December 8th. Of 2024, and that's close, a week or so, at the NAC, you can search online, Eventbrite or Facebook has this, but you know, Santa visits Frederick Airport or something like that, you'll find, but you buy like $9 for a whole family and they get to sit on Santa's lap. There's an aircraft in there, they get to look at stuff like that. They also do one with the Easter Bunny in April, so neat events like that. You can go ahead and do next slide. We also get blips occasionally, which are very popular. We haven't gotten good here in a couple of years, and I don't know what their deal is, but they used to come out and they just float around in the midfield. And we're fortunate enough to have a big open area they can come to for at least a little while longer. Then I throw this in there too of like for the non-flying population who just likes to come out and paint an airplane. You know, we encourage all of that. It's a public asset. We have fences up to keep people safe. We welcome people as much as we can, as long as they're in the right areas. And then it would be unfortunate if I didn't mention this, but I think we have a really neat boat on Carroll Creek coming very soon. So watch Carroll Creek and you might see something aviation related.
Yeah.
And we're very excited about it. And it's super cool because that's the community getting involved and representing the thing that they care so much about. So, next slide. Okay, that's all I have for you. We can do some questions for as long as you want. But there's my contact info if you guys need it. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Anyone who has a question, we're gonna hand around the mic.
In talking about this thing on our application, they said it'll show us how to track a plane flying around the country.
Oh, interesting. I might have forgotten.
So you might want to find out whoever said that.
It's probably me. I say a lot of things. So I do have an answer. We have Alicia in our office is very good at this stuff, and we had her create an observation area, which is that one outside Airways in a page that we now have a QR code, and we just have to get it printed and put on the little fence right there. And you can hold the QR code and it links you back to our airport webpage. So if you go to Frederick Municipal Airport webpage, which is a city-run page, there's an observation area tab. And in that tab, you're gonna have ADSB, which is kind of the moving graphical radar looking things of what's actually flying out there with only about a 5-second lag. And you're gonna have a link to live ATC for the Frederick Airport. So that's kind of the best you can do to track aircraft.
Can you stick a tail number in there and find it?
Through ADSB Exchange, you can, but not necessarily through our website is just stripped off of that, but I like using ADSBExchange.com, I guess. I think there's a way you can search tail numbers on there. Next.
Quite a while back, they shut down a Wendy's on Patrick Street. I thought maybe they were actually going to extend the airport over there. Is it just for landing and taking off that they come to that?
Was it Wendy's or Waffle House?
Oh, it was Waffle House. You're right.
So that was before my time, but I know the story very well. People won't let that one go. So what ended up happening was they built the Waffle House. I have no idea how, I think they just weren't looking for that sort of thing. But basically off each end of the runway, there's footages off of it on the ground, and there's invisible surfaces. There's 7 different invisible surfaces that are meant to protect that area in case someone comes in and goes a little bit this way or that way. So what happened is that Waffle House was basically in these extended invisible surfaces, these protected areas. And it was an obstruction basically. So as part of Bales Lane, you remember Bales Lane up there, again, before my time, but there was a bunch of warehouse and buildings and stuff that were right next to kind of where the 5 end is now. All of that, they spent 5 years doing property acquisition and obstruction removal and demo of buildings in order to be able to not really even grow the airport, but just make the airport legal for what it was already at, because they weren't looking at some of these things, some of these land compatibility things we're looking at today and protecting it. So that's why is basically they need these footages, these slopes off the extended end of the center line to protect, just to be able to have that room to land.
Couple of questions. I wonder what your goals are in terms of volume, and I think you don't have radar, and why is that?
It's a very good question. So my goals of volume, you mean like air traffic, right? That's hard to say. So we're at 100,000, which is a lot, right? Our controllers are exhausted pretty often, and we're a pretty busy airport. We don't really have any goals in terms of that. I would say our goals would be more based aircraft and more like aircraft needing services, which really drives that business, drives that job. So whatever results, it's kind of I guess a double-edged sword there, because the more of that you have, the busier it's going to get. It's already pretty busy out there a lot of times. So I don't know that we necessarily have a goal. What was your second question?
Radar.
Oh, radar. Okay, so not every tower has radar. Majority of them do not. So when we have political type people up there, I tell them a lot is we've got recreational flyers who have an iPad or even a phone in their plane, and it gives them an ADSB, the same thing we have there, and they can look and see where all the aircraft is. Sometimes it's being built in, and it doesn't cost that much, less than $1,000. Our tower has 2-way radio and binoculars. That's it. And they're responsible for deconflicting 100,000 operations a day. And I asked the politician type, I said, do you think that's right? They go, no, that's insane. And it is. So a lot of times they have the pilots telling them where aircraft are, because if they can't see it with those binoculars. So long and short of that story is, the FAA is not installing any new radars in towers, in contract towers particularly, and they haven't certified an ADSB display to go in them. So the 2024 FAA reauthorization gave them some sort of timeline, we'll say 180 days, to provide a solution on an ADSB situational awareness display to go in contract towers, which is precisely what we are and what we need, is them to have something up there that they can legally look at that shows them some sort of picture, even if that picture is inaccurate. So it's a good question. Most people do not realize that not every single tower has radar, including most pilots don't. I'm saying on a daily basis, they say, I don't understand why you can't see me on the radar. Good questions.
Because they don't have radar.
They don't have radar, they got binoculars.
I have 2 questions. The first one is, you had a picture up here about possibly 9 additional hangars behind the existing one,
Yes,
A through F or whatever is
Yes.
there now. So it would be adjacent to and right behind.
yes,
Okay,
yeah, mirror image over taxiway Charlie.
okay. And then my second question is, I visited one of the hangars that has a museum
Yes,
in it. Is that still there?
that is still there.
Is it still being manned or run or open?
That's a good question. I don't know. That's Malcolm Vankirk is running that. I don't know what sort of schedule they have, if they have a schedule, or if it's just emailing them, I don't know if they have a website, so,
Okay,
yeah, I don't know how that's coordinated with him, but he does still have stuff in there.
yeah, and I asked because that might be a really good thing to have availably open for your upcoming.
Yeah. Yeah, and we would love to have an aviation museum on the field, it's just who's paying for it.
Yeah, it's been.
They're not cheap to have a hangar, right? I mean, a hangar of any reasonable size is 5 million. And it's tough to find a donor to do that. So we're always open to the idea, we have the right space and the right money, we'd love to have an aviation museum on the field.
So those additional hangars that are gonna be built, they're gonna be immediately taken up if you have a 7-year waiting list.
More or less. Now, they're not gonna be cheap, though, that's the other thing, so if they were cheap, they would like that, no, but they're gonna be kind of expensive.
I have a question.
Yes.
There's a chapter of the Experimental Aircraft Association that Frederick tells about experimental aircraft.
That's a great question. So in your intro, I think I talked about this as, before I worked in airports, I was flying and with a group in Bolingbrook, Illinois, I built an experimental aircraft. So another really cool program for anybody that's interested in building aircraft is the EAA chapter, Experimental Aircraft Association, chapter 524, has a hangar at Frederick Airport. They have multiple builds going on pretty much all the time since I've been here. And they are a group of non-professionals who build aircraft in garages and hangars and everything. And they most often invite everybody, the public, to come out on their build days, at least Saturdays. And you can actually build parts, pull rivets on airplanes that in a couple of years will fly out of Frederick Airport and become flying airplanes. So the reason I talked a lot about Tom is it was a really neat experience to build parts, assemble an airplane with a group, and then watch it fly for the first time. And then later when I flew it up, this is.
You didn't do it the first time.
No, I wasn't experienced for that, no. But just in general, being like, am I about to fly this? The takeaway from it ends up being is, before that time, I wouldn't have thought it would have been possible, right? And then after it, I'm like, oh yeah, you can build an airplane in your garage, absolutely.
Right, really.
Yeah, and you don't have to be anybody, you can just, use average skills, so you get a little taste of that from the EA chapter, right? And they're at the Festival of Flight, they've got their hangar open, look for other events in there, but they're a really cool organization just to get involved and just to look at it and see and stuff, so they're pretty neat.
What is the largest aircraft size that the airport can handle?
So, right now, Hotel Gulf is an aircraft we have flying around. It's a Bombardier Global. So if you were floating like a regional airliners, they're ERJs, it's about that size, maybe a bigger gauge too, but basically they're about 100-foot wingspan. And that's about 100,000 pounds maximum loading. That's about where we end up. And the real limiting factor there is the width of our runway at 100 feet, and then the length of it. We're limited pretty much to where we're at 2,800 or 5,820 feet. They're big aircraft. If you ever see them out there, they're big aircraft. You can again take off and fly to France if you wanted to. In that, they're huge. But they're not as big as like 737s, the double aisle ones you typically fly, the airlines fly a lot, so they're more like the regionals. So about 100-foot wingspan, 27 feet tall on the tail.
How many passengers?
Depending on how they're configured, you could probably put 80 in, like the airlines configure them, but generally it's 15 to 20 typically, is my guess. And a lot of times they're used for private use.
I have 2 questions. The first is, do you still have a glider club there? And the second question is, when the Commemorative Air Force brings their aircraft here, are they charged for that?
Under the commemorative aircraft, so we have a couple different groups that come in and out. Commemorative is one of them. We do not charge anybody that does that. So when they come in, and generally they're selling rides. We haven't had it in a while, but Father's Day, a couple of years ago, we had one. And they sell rides in particular planes they have and maintain. We don't generally ever charge them. It doesn't cost us much to host them. We have to do a little bit of safety stuff with them, get certain areas, communicate stuff. It doesn't cost us anything. So we generally, any nonprofit, we're not charging anything. My item was approved, like the fence grant, so. So, no, we like that stuff, we want it there, we do it as much as we possibly can, and the biggest limitation we usually have is staffing. The airport runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we only work 5 days a week during the day, so. We do a lot of, like after this, I'm probably gonna end up going there, because I was talking to the tower, there's a whole herd of deer roaming around the airport, so. Probably gonna have to try to do that in the dark, which would be really fun. Glider hang. Mid-Atlantic Soaring Club was there until about 2005-ish. What ended up happening with that is the FAA came in, did a land use audit, and we were charging them nothing for their lease of the glider hangar. And that is a violation from the FAA. So they said, you need to fix this. MSP state trooper was the same way. We charged them $1. They said you can't do that. You have to charge them a fair rate for their aeronautical use property. MSP ended up paying, we changed our lease, and then Mid-Atlantic actually, from what I've read, ended up suing the FAA. I don't think they won. I guess they didn't win, but they ended up ultimately after the tower. Everybody thinks it was the tower that kicked them out. It was this lease violation that made the airport have to charge them, and their model of charging them for that much space wouldn't have worked. So they're up at Fairfield, Pennsylvania. I've actually been to the airport. It's really nice. And then I think they moved somewhere in Virginia too. So no gliders anymore. It would be tough with the tower and the level of traffic we have. I heard the last couple of years when the tower went in, things were very chaotic, trying to mix in gliders and a large amount of aircraft. So it's a little bit unfortunate because my preferred type of airport is a grass strip somewhere. And the Frederick area is growing, and it's never going to go back to those pictures you saw, unfortunately, but we're still trying to keep it as a pretty good airport while we can. But once you get to a certain size, it usually doesn't go backwards. So Keymar is a good airport. You should visit Keymar.
Where you think there's an airport keyword?
Keymar, yeah, someone who actually lives in Wren Quarter, a young couple bought it. And it's, I don't know what road it's off of, but it's Keymar Airport. It's really neat. That's another one of those private airports.
How was the glider taken off?
Tow plane. So there's little I know about gliders. I think gliders are fascinating. I'm doing a glider rating eventually one day. There's a tow plane that tows them up. That's the most common in the US. And then in the UK, I believe there's a lot of winch launches. But you should look up a winch launch glider. It's a big engine on a trailer way down the way with a big drum, and they clutch it in, and they just start dragging this thing down towards the winch, and you go up at the same time until you're close to it, and then it just decouples, and you go up like 1,000 feet. I'm fascinated by watching videos of it, but I'd rather be towed up by an airplane.
And thank you.
Yes.
We used to live like right on the air. And every year, now they have a joint air show. When my kids are younger, they have a air show.